Great. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Shayan. I head the Innovation Award at the Fair Education Alliance, and great to see all of you here today. I'm going to share about the Innovation Award, which is the award that I lead. And there are going to be two big focus areas for today's session. One is sort of an intro to the Innovation Award. So what's the award really? What is it about? And then the latter half is going to talk a little more about specifically the application and how you can put through a solid application. So that's the thesis of today's session. With that, I'll dive straight in. Gina, are there any housekeeping bits before we get into the session?
Yeah, the first thing which I was just going to write in the chat, but I think it will be fantastic. We have a really nice small group. There are 8 of us on the call. So if we just want to kick off, Shine, thank you so much for introducing yourself. We'll just do quick introductions, really nice to just take a few minutes. And if you joined any other sessions, you've known that we've gone straight out into breakout rooms. We don't have to for this one because we're kind of a breakout room in and of itself. So if we just share our name, our organization, and what we're hoping to get out of today's session. So my name is Gina. I am the co-CEO of the Fair Education Alliance. I lead it alongside Sam Butters. And I'm really hoping to get out of this session a good understanding from you as a potential interested applicants about the ideas you have and really provide some practical and tangible advice supporting Cheyenne. So if I just go ahead and tag and we can go through that way. Linda, do you want to go next?
Hi everyone, my name's Linda. I've been running a community startup project called Succeed to the Max. Part of its aim is all about raising awareness of different opportunities, of different career paths, and also preparing young people into that transition into university, helping them to thrive and also preparing them for their early career development as well.
Amazing, thank you. And there are lots of orgs that we can connect you with within the wider sector. Roger, shall we go to you next?
Thank you. Roger Cheetham from Transformational Resilience, and I'm an independent school speaker. In 2013, I became the victim of an attempted murder myself, and instead of allowing that to be a negative that happened to me, I've turned it into a positive, not only for myself but for our next generation. And quite often now we deliver resilience talks and resilience workshops within schools and colleges, speak at crime and justice weeks, etc., and have been doing that for the last couple of years completely self-funded. I've got to the stage where, as Oprah says, you can't pour from an empty cup. So I'm interested in the award to support me in doing what I'm doing and give me a structure moving forward.
Thank you for sharing, Roger, and amazing to hear how you have really used that crisis and turned it into the next phase. So thank you so much for sharing. Nora, over to you.
Hi there. My name's Nora. I am the head of fundraising and comms at a small charity called Kalisa. We work with young people at risk of exclusion and those who are already going down a criminal pathway, I suppose. They may be in a young offenders institute or already in prison. And yeah, we work to give them opportunities to choose other pathways. We focus very much on social and emotional well-being.
Great. And what are you hoping to get out of today, Nora?
I am hoping to find out a bit more about the process, and I'm kind of here to scope out for one of my colleagues who can't be here today, who is interested in applying.
Thank you. Awesome. And they're interested in setting in the Innovation Award rather than the Intrapreneurship Award, which would be for Kulisa. They're interested in the one which is for them. They have an idea and an initiative.
Oh, am I in the wrong call?
There is another one happening on Entrepreneurship, but it's not till later on in it, a week and a half. But if it's for Kulisa as an FEA member to do an internal innovation, yeah, that would be a different call, and I can send you the link for that. But that would not be for innovation. A lot of the content is the same. We run both awards in parallel, but the big difference is innovation is open to the public. Anybody can apply. and we will support them to turn their idea into an initiative. Intrapreneurship is for our FEA members like Kalisa, who already exist.
I'm sorry.
And
I'm sorry. Okay, so I may be on the wrong call then.
no worries, I'll send you it. So on the 27th and 29th, we have 2 sessions about entrepreneurship. So ping those over. They're happening in the main pink room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel free to stay for a while, but see what's right for you. Yeah.
I might then head.
Sounds good, Nora.
But thank you very much anyway. Sorry about that.
No
okay,
problem.
then.
Good to know.
Bye. Good luck.
Nora, what was the name of the charity again, please?
Kalisa.
How do you spell that, please?
It's KH.
Yeah.
ULISA. It's from the Zulu language, and it means to nurture. And so our roots were well, we actually kind of get the royalties from an organisation in South Africa. So so we have a lot of South African roots. Yeah.
Cool. And you can connect on the attendee list. Thanks,
Yes,
Nora.
do. Bye-bye.
Great. Bilkis, over to you.
Hi, I'm Bilkis. I am the CEO and co-founder of UBU, and we are a small social enterprise working with schools in East London, and our mission is to inspire children to think beyond their race, their class and their gender stereotypes. And we do that through a school program that we've co-created with teachers locally, and also now home activity kits that we are going to be selling to parents. What do I hope to get out of this session? Understanding just the structure of the process, and to also hear from other people about why they're joining. That's always interesting, and seeing who my potential cohort could be. So yeah.
Love that. Thinking about the cohort from the get-go. Brilliant. And Helena, I think long time no see. Welcome.
Hi, Gina. Yes, and hello, everybody. I think Gina recognizes me because we set up our organization Mathsmakers some years back and applied and went through to as far as the final, but not as winners for the Teach First Award. And because of COVID-19 and moving so much online, it feels like our organization is kind of needing to rethink and reinvent. And so just to say a little bit, we run maths education programs for disadvantaged students, working closely with schools, and running our programs at the end of the school day or at weekends, all of them being run online now, and making this extra support available at this critical time when so many young people have lost out due to lockdown. So we make our programs available for free to the families, and we're just trying to reach out on the maths front, helping to increase attainment, but also helping students to feel less overwhelmed, a little bit more confident about getting back into learning, about staying on top of their learning. And what I'm hoping to get out of today is this session is I suppose I'm trying to understand whether or not it is for organizations like Mathsmakers who might be at another stage of wanting to reinvent ourselves, even though we're not at the very early stage. So I'll be interested to hear about that. And I need to give my apologies in advance that I will not be able to stay for all of the session, Gina, but thank you very much.
Yes, well, Cheyenne can contact you afterwards and pick that up. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, Christian, yes, just know your name, Christian, and just if you say what you're hoping to get out of today, that'd be great.
Hi, Gina. Yeah, my name is Christian Massard. Bit of a sort of two things. One, I'm joining a charitable organisation tomorrow, which is focused on social mobility within the UK. So I've been looking to get sort of as much as I can out of today. Just do some learning myself, because this is a very new area to me. I've never worked in this field before, but chose a career change at the beginning of the year. But I also have an idea myself which I'm looking to expand on, and yeah, just to gain any learning opportunities that I can from this and hearing from other people's ideas, as well as the process of potentially applying for the Innovation Award either this year or next.
Fantastic. Thanks, Christian. Jenny, what are you hoping to get out of today?
Hello, sorry, apologies for my camera doesn't work. Yeah, actually, like Helena, I've applied for this previously when it was the Teach First Innovation Award, and I'm curious, like one of the things I want to try and get out of this is whether the process has changed, and I feel like I was at a very, very early stage when I applied for that previously, and I've had sort of more experience with my social enterprise and a few more case studies under my belt. So I think, you know, I've definitely got more confidence in the idea. So yeah, my project is called Make Do, and it is a arts and engineering program for disadvantaged and disaffected youth. So trying to recognise, I guess, the link between creative learning opportunities outside of the classroom and how that actually has a positive impact on their motivation and progress and attainment within the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a strong link, especially with what we see with our 4 priority areas for the FEA. Fantastic, Jenny. Good to see you again. And then Abigail, our last one.
Hi. Apologies if I'm in and out. I've got a small baby, so she's quiet at the moment. I come from a journalism background, and then after spending quite a long time in journalism and working in communications, I trained as a teacher with Teach First. And I've been I left in 2015, the school that I was teaching at, and I've been looking at ways to try and combine the two. But one of the things that I was really keen on when I worked in schools is trying to engage children in literacy and writing. And that's a project that I want to focus on for the Innovation Fund, my ideas on how to do that.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much, Abigail, and thank you all so much for sharing your ideas. Shine, it's back to you for all of your expertise. You're in great hands with Cheyenne as the head of the award.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gina, for that, for facilitating that introduction, and great to hear about everyone and what you're doing. Really inspiring stuff, I think, across the room. I hope you can see my slides. Just give me a thumbs up if you can. Perfect. Cool. So I think I've shared this before, but I think a few people joined late, so I'll repeat myself. There are 2 parts to this session today. The first is an intro to the Innovation Award, and the second is a little more focused on application writing and top tips for writing great application. Just a heads up that for some of you or if any of you have attended any of the previous sessions in the series, some of these might seem repetitive because it's a kind of consolidated session which tries to bring some of the elements that have been covered before, but there'll be equal amounts of me sharing and Q&A, and the Q&A time is obviously how we want to shape it. So there's definitely opportunity to also have new conversations. So let me get into the session without further ado. Just to kind of lay out what today is going to be about, I'm going to share some information, but really looking forward to also hearing your questions and being able to answer some of them. And if there are some that can't be answered today because they're too specific, maybe not relevant to the group, we can always take them to our one-to-ones, which are scheduled for 7th to 14th of May. But yeah, I'll try to answer most of the general questions today. So before I get into what the Innovation Award is, I want to just kind of lay out for you a little bit for those of you who might not be familiar with the FEA and the Fair Education Alliance and what we do. So a big goal is to have an education system that is fair, where no child's educational success is limited by their socioeconomic background. And there are really 2 parts to this. There's the way I understand it, there's the fair education bit and there's the alliance bit. And on the first bit, we know that education in the UK and in England is not fair, and you know, where you're born and your family income has a disproportionate impact on your life chances. But we also know that there are lots of great actors and players out there trying to make a difference and trying to make the situation better. but often what they lack is sort of a connecting tissue, information flows, a platform that brings them together, and that's where critically the alliance comes in, and that's what we try to facilitate. And here you can see about our 230 odd members that are currently part of the Fair Education Alliance, and we really try to be that act as that bridge between these organizations and facilitate connections wherever there are synergies. So a bit about what the FEA does on the ground. So we have three big strands. One is collective action, which is the idea of bringing those organizations together that you saw in the last slide. There's also policy and influencing, which is try to influence progressive legislation, often on the back of or using the weight of that alliance. It often provides some level of credibility when multiple people are demanding the same progressive legislations. And our third big piece is scaling impact, where the idea is that we identify promising innovations across the ecosystem. Like we said, there are already people doing great things. We want to identify them and nurture them. And as part of that, we run 3 awards, 2 of which are open now, which are kind of highlighted, the Innovation and the Entrepreneurship Awards. And this is a quick summary slide which captures both the awards. As Gina was mentioning in the beginning, a lot of the how of the award is similar. Like there is a £15,000 salary, there's strategic support, a place on the innovation incubator. So most of the elements are common, but it's just the people who participate in each of the awards are different. One, innovation being early stage innovators who are trying to set something up, entrepreneurship being an established organization within which someone is trying to innovate. And there are a few kind of sessions which are part of the Impact Festival down there. I won't go into detail, but today's the first one right on the bottom left, the 20th, and then we also have the 28th and the 29th. So keep an eye out for those 2 dates on your calendar. And yeah, just wanted to deep dive on the Innovation Award itself. I've already spoken about what it offers. I wanted to highlight the fact that the deadline for application is 18th May, so it's about 2 days short of a month, and it's open to the public. So as opposed to the Intrapreneurship Award, for which you need to be an FEA member, this one's open to the public, so literally anyone in England can apply. And we call it a launchpad for early stage innovators to move from a great idea to a thriving initiative. And what that should tell you is, like, we use the word great idea and we really mean it. So someone might actually just have an idea and not have actually piloted it or tested it, but an idea which has a lot of potential. And we're very happy to, if there's enough promise in that idea, to support it. So we're open to people who have piloted, but also those who are sort of very nascent, if that makes sense. And moving on, I think I mentioned this in one of the other sessions, the Impact Festival, it's one of the biggest support avenues, I would say, in order to build up and power up your application, but also your skills in general and your idea in general, right? So the sessions you saw on the previous slide, which I'll just go back to, these are specifically geared towards the award and writing a great application or understanding the award from the perspective of award winners. The ones on this slide are more generic, and these are just focused on developing your idea as a whole, right? Problem research, theory of change, measuring impact, business plan, sustainability. And of course, they will help you also put together a great application, but they're also just meant for your development of the idea. And, this is kind of the trajectory or the learning journey, as we call it, through the application process. And yeah, we want to make it a learning process where we've had 2 workshops already. Actually, the 3 that are highlighted are the ones that have already happened or are currently happening. And as you can see, there are 2 more that are in the pipeline. So 6th of May, that's specifically focused on the selection process, and then 1-to-1s from 7th to the 14th of May. And all of that culminates in the application deadline of 18th of May. By the way, if there are any burning questions, and if you're like, I don't understand this, like, you can feel free to interject, but we will have dedicated space for Q&A. But I just wanted to make that offer in case something is unclear. Cool, yeah, so I hope that kind of makes sense, the learning journey. We're right now in that middle piece of 20 to 29th April, and we have like a feast of sessions, workshops in store as part of the Impact Festival. Now, just to give you a sense of what the Innovation Award is, I thought a good way to kind of disaggregate it is the why, who, and what. And I spoke a little bit about the why. It is to nurture innovations that are already out there. And I think the second point kind of speaks to the fact that the Innovation Award is probably more important than ever before today because of just the unique situation the world is in, and the fact that COVID has magnified inequities in a massive way. In terms of the who, I think I shared that, it's anyone with an idea, literally. So anyone based in England and wants to work in England is eligible to apply. And in terms of what it is, I would best describe it as a one-year program of support, which takes you through all of those different elements of one-to-one support, but also peer support, but also coaching and mentorship. So it's kind of multifaceted in that sense. And I like to describe it as personalized yet networked, because there is an element of bespoke support, and we treat each award winner differently, as they rightly should, because they're working on slightly different problems often and are slightly different stages of development. But it's that networked element which also provides a great deal of it almost unlocks a different kind of value when you have people who are almost in the same boat trying to go and traverse along the same path. So it's that kind of combination of personalized and networked. Yeah, I won't go into these slides, but these are kind of elaborate what I already shared in the summary slide. I mean, this is an anecdote that I like, in terms of who people often have expectations of, like what entrepreneurs should look like. But I think our take is that anyone can be an entrepreneur, and we've actually even removed the word entrepreneur from our comms, like we just say innovator. So anyone can actually innovate. And unicorns are a popular metaphor often for high growth startups. And I think a new word that's caught up now is a camel, because more resilient, that's what you need in today's age. But like for us, we're not looking at either, we're just looking at humans with an idea and an appetite to learn. And what about the human? So anyone from the public, we will support 5 ideas every year, up to 5. And these could be programs, product, partnership, or service. It could be targeted at parents, teachers, or students. It could be focused on attainment, life skills, play, sport. So the possibilities are quite wide in terms of the remit of that idea. We're definitely looking at diverse individuals across gender, ethnicity, age, geography, but within England, and other factors of diversity as well. And we particularly welcome applicants who have actually lived through the problem, either themselves or potentially vicariously by being in a situation which has kind of brought them closer to the problem. And yeah, I haven't gone into the eligibility criteria here, but it's kind of well laid out in our application guidance document, which is on the Innovation Award webpage. So I recommend you check that out for slightly more detailed information on eligibility. And I think that the only note I wanted to make is, although we have eligibility criteria, we really are looking to kind of acknowledge extenuating circumstances that people might have. Edge cases like the limit is 20K and someone has earned 21K. We can always have those conversations. So things like those, but just wanted to lay that out in terms of who. And in terms of the current who, so because we are already running a program, this is the current cohort. Again, a very diverse mix of individuals and ideas. Like you can see, from untold histories to university retention, to exclusion, to relationships, to occupational therapy. And 2 of them are highlighted. So the first one, Ancestors Unknown and Life Lessons. That's because in the last 2 workshops that were held, which you probably saw on that learning journey slide, if you go back to the videos, they've all also shared their lessons and their experiences. So none of them have been able to join today's call, but if you go back to those recordings, you'll actually get to hear from them. So if you're interested, I recommend going back to the kind of the website and looking at those videos. Great. Again, a slightly different dimension to the who. These are award winners who have won the award in the past, and I know some of you mentioned that you had applied in the past when this was a part of Teach First. So you can again see right all the way from 2013 to 2018, we've had a range of very different ideas. Some of the kind of diverse ones are highlighted there, which are all very different from each other. Yeah, so that's kind of a brief idea about who we're looking for in the future, who we have currently, but also who we've had in the past. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea across time horizon in terms of who this award is for. Now coming to the what, it's a launch pad for early stage innovators to move from a great idea to a thriving initiative. And I've shared these things earlier, so I won't go into detail, but there's a financial component to it. There's one-to-one strategic support, which is the kind of more human bespoke element of coaching. There's the incubator bit, which is training and like specific technical skills, areas such as theory of change or business model or legal structures and so on. The Innovation Award logo and endorsement, that comes in the form of validation and like a stamp of approval for your work from the FEA side. The access to the network is more around, embracing the community that we have both within the cohort, the innovation cohort, but also the portfolio across the 3 awards. So innovation, entrepreneurship, and scaling, but also the wider FEA network of 230 organizations. So it's almost like a set of concentric circles, different peer networks as you go broader and broader. So as you can see, all of those elements are very different in some ways. One is money related, one is kind of coaching related, one is community related. So we try to create this kind of ecosystem of support by providing all these different elements of support in a kind of holistic way. This is the sort of timeline very roughly. So between September and December of this year, the expectation is that you're part-time. I mean, you might already be full-time, and that's great, but from our end, we're fine if you're part-time, if you're in an existing job. And we're okay for you to kind of work part-time and develop the idea, but without the salary. So you're kind of winding off something else, let's say a job that you're currently at. And in terms of the incubator, our focus is really on research and design, and really understanding the problem and coming up with that sort of first version of your product in some ways. And the cadence of the workshops are monthly at this stage. But what happens from Jan is things, we switch gears slightly. The program becomes full-time and we start paying your salary. So we're essentially trying to get money off the table by providing for your sustenance. That's the sort of rationale behind the salary. And the focus, again, in terms of the curriculum, shifts away from problem research and just understanding and the kind of first iteration of your product to actually testing it in the real world and thinking about important things like sustainability and growth. Because, while we have a year together, that's in some ways that, time flies and soon you're like, I need to be sustainable on my own. And so it's really about, planting those seeds and building that capacity for you to leave the program on an upward trajectory, even once our support officially ends, even though you continue to be part of the larger FEA network. And then the cadence of the workshops in Jan onwards becomes fortnightly. So it's a more frequent set of sessions that happen. So that's kind of to give you an idea of the 2 phases of the program and the different levels of intensity there. Sorry, I can see lots of stuff happening in the chat and I haven't actually looked at it, but I want to take stock.
No problem, Cheyenne. I am responding to a few questions coming in and putting a few in the car park for you for the Q&A session.
Perfect. Thank you, Gina, for that. This is almost what I would call the holy grail. So what I'm sharing with you is a lot of the distilled information, just some of the highlights. But if you really want to have a detailed understanding, we've put together this application information and guidance document, and that's on the Innovation Award webpage. So highly recommend you to check that out. And especially if you have questions coming out of like having read this, always open for you to bring that to our one-to-ones if you're signing up for those in May. A little bit about the selection process, and I'm covering a lot of ground, but hopefully this is all making sense, and we can come to it. Any questions you have in the Q&A section. But in terms of selection process, 18th of May is the deadline, as you know by now. And then what happens after that is, so we have May, July, and August. Those are the 3 big kind of milestones. In July, what happens is the up to 20 shortlisted applicants present to the shortlisting panel. And then from there, from the 20, we're kind of whittle them down to about 10, and the up to 10 present on the final panel on 18th of August. So that's the broad timeline. And post 18th of August, we end up with up to 5 award winners. So at the end of the entire process, going from May to August, we end up with 5 award winners. But we've created these multiple steps. 1, in order for it to be a learning journey, and 2, to make it kind of rigorous and make sure there are multiple people and multiple sets of eyes looking at your application to ensure fairness. this is sort of the softer element of selection and the kind of values and principles that we believe in when we think about the selection process. One, we want it to be rigorous. Second, we want it to be fair. That's in our name. And third, we want it to be useful. So the usefulness, how we try to bring that on board is through a range of things that we do, like workshops, the Impact Festival, and so on. So it's this kind of wrapper of support alongside the application journey that you're going through. The fairness is how we try and bring that to life is by corralling a group of experts and sector leaders who bring in that objective lens. So we don't do the selection in-house. We get the best people we can in the ecosystem to come and sit on our panels to bring in that expertise. And that's also what contributes to the rigor of the selection process, I would say. So hopefully, irrespective of whether you win the award or not, you'll end up getting good feedback and going through a process that is educational in some ways. Coming to the judges now, just putting some faces to what I spoke about in terms of bringing in sector leaders. These are actually the judges we had last year. I haven't put the judges we have kind of in the pipeline for this year. We have a separate workshop coming up on 6th of May that's specifically focused on selection. So I'll cover a lot of that in that workshop, like who are the people who are going to judge it this year. But this is just to give you a sense of the kind of people we've had in the last year. And these are the shortlisting judges, and we have another slide on the final judges. Again, as you can see, a broad range of young people, people from the FEA, people who are funders, head teachers, education researchers, quite a wide array that we've tried to bring on board there. Great, so that's my intro spiel on the Intro to the Innovation Award. And I hope that all made sense. I think in terms of time, we have till about, we have the next 10 minutes for Q&A. So I'll stop sharing my slides so I can see all of you. And then let's dive into the questions.
Great. So Cheyenne, before we jump in more, there were two that I haven't answered because I think they're a bit more complex. So Bilkis, do you want to go ahead and just ask yours for that clarification about the slide?
Sure. On the slide with the award winners, there's a red box around some of the organisations. So I just wanted to get clarification on why that was.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you remember the application support journey that you saw, there were two workshops that have already happened, one on 18th of March and one on 1st of April.
Yeah.
And for those two workshops, we have the recordings on our webpage. So if you just go to Innovation Award, the webpage, I've uploaded them. And if you go onto those recordings, those two award winners I've actually featured in them. So on this particular call, we don't have any award winners joining us. But in those two recordings, you'll actually get to hear from the award winners talking about their experience. So of course, if you attended any of these sessions, you would have already met the award winners. But if you haven't, you can actually see their recorded experience.
So Cheyenne, that's talking about the 2020, so on the previous one. But key things to note are that next Wednesday, we have 3 of the current cohort leading. And then next Thursday, we have 2 of the current cohort leading. So you'll get a chance to chat with them then or see those recordings. But I think the question, Cheyenne, was about on the slide where you had all of the award winners since 2013. Yeah. You had one selected on each year that was in red. And you said, this is to show the diversity. Can you just talk a bit more about that, please, and why you've highlighted or what you wanted to get across with that?
Sure. And cool, I'm just going to share my slides. Just give me a moment.
So as you're doing that, Cheyenne, I think the key elements around it, I could see that impact ed and learning with parents were both highlighted. So what we're really hoping to get across with the diversity is that there are various different types of initiatives. So Impact Ed is an ed tech organization. They are supporting schools to measure their impact. Learning with Parents is doing direct to parent provision. So how do you support parents to be supporting their children in different ways? And so as Cheyenne goes through those, I think it's really just to show the different types of initiatives that we have on an annual basis that get taken in to the cohort, rather than it being a specific direct to pupil. The majority are direct to pupil, or they have been previously, but that's not to say that that's the only type of initiative. Back to you, Cheyenne.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I just kept the slide up in case Gina, you want to add more color, but yeah. You've got the College for Skills, you've got Right to Succeed, which is more place-based innovation. You've got Maths for Parents, which works with parents. So yeah, that was just to showcase the diversity across the years. And Tales Toolkit, which is more focused on the early years and then storytelling. Yeah.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. And then Cheyenne, you have another question
Great.
from that we haven't asked yet, which was from Jenny, Joyce. Joyce, is the award given to an individual? I'll pass over to you.
Right. Yes.
Sorry, I'll pass over to Joyce to
individual,
clarify her question. Sorry, Cheyenne. Joyce, do you want to just say a bit more?
Yes, I guess we're in a bit of catch-22 situation here at Insight Outreach, and that there's a lot of volunteers and even the board members and trustees are helping on operations right now. I suppose we have something that works. We know that it works. We've scaled up, and so I'm just trying to think. So it wouldn't be me. I mean, you know, it wouldn't be me, but a group of people who would like to apply for this award. Now, we can't apply for what the other award that Fair Education Alliance run, right? But it strikes me that we might be able to do something here. Am I right?
Yep.
Because that's something that I'm thinking of.
Right. So just to understand, just to make sure I've understood your question. So what you're saying, it's not one individual, but it's a group of people who are starting a new idea. That's the only difference. Is that
right? Okay.
correct?
Well, it's not a new idea, but actually, there is a project that would stem from what we're doing now, which could, which we could think of, you know, putting forward as an application for this innovation award. And right. I just wondered whether it has to go to an individual or it has to go to an organization.
Right. Yeah.
Or can it go to an organization?
The short answer is it has to go to an individual, bracket S. So it could be multiple individuals as well. So we've had co-founders, for example, applied together. But yeah, you know, the thing is, the only constraint from our end is that we can pay the salary to one individual. So I think that's the consideration that's important. So we can pay the salary to one individual. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Understood. And I suppose in terms of what's done with it is something that can be discussed with that individual and the rest of the organization. Is that right?
Right. And I also feel like in your case, I think this probably merits a one-to-one conversation. I think I'd probably want to understand your situation slightly better.
Sure, I'd be happy to connect with you outside. I do have another, sorry to hog, since I'm speaking, there some two words flashed up, the Innovation Awards and the Intrapreneurship Awards. So I just wanted a little clarification on the difference.
Right. So essentially, I think the simplest way of putting it is the Intrapreneurship Award is for existing organizations. So already established organizations, which now have the wherewithal to internally innovate and start a new innovation internally. So the shell already exists, they're already in operation. They want to create a new wing or a new internal innovation. Whereas the Innovation Award is for someone or people who are just starting out from scratch and creating something new in an organization that's not already established.
Thank you very much.
Great. So I'll just stop sharing my slides again so I can see everyone in case there are more questions.
Hi, I have a question. My name's Linda. So just in reference to the Innovation Award, so when I was looking at the bullet points, it touched upon attainment. There was a few particular key focuses. Can it also focus on things in relation to, I don't know, employment focus as well for students, or does it have to be strictly attainment and academic focus? Can it also focus on skills development?
Right. No, I think what I was trying to showcase there is actually the breadth. So attainment is one of 5 things that you could be working on. So attainment is definitely a part of it, but it could be life skills like pastoral development. It could be, you know, education to employment, that bridge. It could be university access. It could be university retention. So yeah, it's not just focused on attainment. In fact, like the FEA actively sort of advocates for a more holistic education system that's not only looking at attainment.
Okay, great.
Well, I think it's really important just to highlight that, and also really useful for Cheyenne for the future comms. So if I just go ahead and share my screen so you're aware of the FEA and why it started. Hopefully you can see the 5 fair education impact goals. So the FEA started back in 2014 with 20 founding members who all came behind these shared goals. So you can see that attainment is behind goals 1 and 2 from primary and secondary, but equally as important is having the resilience and the well-being to support high aspirations. It's about looking at post-16 opportunities, and it's about looking at access to and graduation from university. And all of the phases from, we'd say, from cradle through to career are included within this. The FEA, for your awareness, I think, what are you coming into, is a membership that all of the members have said that they want an inclusive education system, which does 4 things. So it is a rounded education system. Attainment is one pillar of that, but equally skills and well-being. Another strand of this is supporting teachers and leaders to thrive. We know how crucial they are. And if you were with us on some of the sessions that have happened earlier, we've heard from Nina Lowell, who is a head teacher at St. Stephen's Primary, really talking about the importance of getting great teachers and really the collaboration that's needed. And Vanessa Ogden, our chair, mentioned this morning, the invisible hands that are there. So all of the multi-agency support. The third element is to support parents and their communities, as they are absolutely critical in ensuring that education doesn't stop at the school gates. And then 4th is to join up the post-16 opportunities. So absolutely, Linda, your question, I think it strikes it both on the impact goals and in terms of the inclusive education system that we wish to see.
Great. And at the moment, because I've been testing, just to kind of give a bit of context, so it started off with my project, it started off as a lived experience, and I did some work with parents and also with students, where I've also received some testimonials and so forth. But because we've tested it, I'm now in the process of trying to register it as an organization. So it's not yet registered. So I was wondering whether I'd still be eligible to apply, even though I haven't got a legal entity yet. So would I still be eligible? It sounds like, based on what you said, it's still eligible for individuals, but I just wanted to clarify whether I can still apply.
Yep. No, thanks for asking that. And yeah, the short answer is you are eligible. And unlike some other programs, we are very open to the idea stage. Like, we're really testing the merits of the idea. And if you've piloted, that's okay. And if you've incorporated, that's also sometimes okay, as in there's no constraints around that. But equally, as an idea, like, we're very happy to kind of look at idea stage applications.
And some of the support that you'll receive on the incubator session, just with regards to that, Cheyenne, do you just want to briefly mention?
Yep. So I think I was talking about some of this before, but specifically the incubator, which is the training aspect of the entire program, focuses on areas like problem research, building your theory of change, your business model, your financial models, sustainability models, hiring your staff, setting culture within the org. So all kinds of aspects of organizational building and idea development. And that's the reason we make that bet, because the program kind of provides that support, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
Sorry, I had one more question. So it was in relation to the booking. I know you said for one-to-ones, we can select dates that are available between the 7th and the 14th.
That is correct.
Are they still available, or are there a
Yeah.
few remaining left? Because I'll probably need to do that soon.
Right. No, I think there are definitely slots available. So if you just go onto the Innovation Award webpage, so that's the faireducationalliance.org/Innovation Award. Thanks, Gina. Yeah, you definitely find the link on there.
Great, thank you.
Can I just ask as a
Yep.
follow-on from Linda's
Go for it,
question, which is, can we book one-to-one sessions with you with a view to ascertaining whether we can actually apply for the award or not? Or is it part of actually having applied in the first place that you
great question. So the one-to-ones are scheduled from 7th to the 14th of May. And the application deadline is after that. Of course, you could have already applied, but I would say you get the most benefit from the process if there are specific questions which are like almost niggles or roadblocks where you're like, I'm not sure about this, then I would say leverage the opportunity and then put in the application.
That's really helpful. Book a slot. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions from the floor? If not, I can move back to the slides for part 2 of the session, which is more focused on writing the application itself. Yeah, does that sound good? Perfect. So I'm going to pull up my slides again. Just give me a sec. Great. Okay, I think we've covered all of this. So I'll just, yep. So we've done the Q&A. This part is focused on writing a great application. The first thing to remember here is that there are 6 parts to the application. It starts with problem, the solution, the impact, sustainability, leadership, and value add. So if you look at the application form, there are sub questions under each of these headers, but broadly these are the 6 categories. And of course, there are lots of top tips around how to write a great application. I've just pulled a few which I thought are kind of most useful that I wanted to highlight. One is, I would say, take your time. That's the first thing I would say. And we do have about a month from today for the application. So you still are in good time. So I would say use that time because the questions are often thought-provoking and it kind of forces you to think and be reflective. So use the time, and then it also helps you to hone the answers. So it's not the first version that you're writing, but you've kind of written something and then refined it. And that leads to the second point, which is around being direct and crisp. So writing something that's sharp, to the point, and is answering the question directly that's been asked. The third bullet is, I think, fairly standard about having an offline copy. And it's recommended you have a word processor and write your application there, and then finally kind of copy it over to the application form. I would say use the full word limit. Again, you'll have limited screen or text real estate. You want to make the best use of it and say as much as you can within the constraints. The fifth one is interesting because I think I've seen a lot of people who often don't do this, but I found this to be really useful, like having someone else who's often not from the education space or not connected to what you're doing, have look at it and proofread it and still let you know if that makes sense and if it's comprehensible to them. It's often a good way to test for jargon or assumptions that you might make in terms of what you've written. And then I think the last one is just, I hope you all submit before the deadline. If you're doing the first one, you just take your time, then hopefully that shouldn't be an issue. Moving on, what I've done is those 6 areas which I spoke about. So problem, solution, impact, sustainability, team, and value add. Joyce, I feel like you have a burning question. Do you? You're good? Okay.
It was only just to ask the word limit of the application.
Right. Okay. So for that, I think, there are word limits for specific questions. And for that, your best bet is the application guidance document, which is on the website. So if you look at that, it kind of gives you a sense. And of course, the application form itself also mentions what the word limit is for each question.
Cheyenne, can you just take a second? I think just do a quick raise of hands.
Yeah.
So just for everybody who's on the call, to see the familiarity, if you've had a chance to look at the guidance notes yet, and I know Joyce, you won't have, but if others have hacks, I think that might shift in the way that this is framed. So you can just use, Bilkis, a real hand, thank you for that. But you can also use the emojis, or you can just go ahead. If you've looked at the guidance notes, go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, just keep your hand down. Cool. So you've only got Bilkis who has seen that, and Helena. So I think you probably just want to give an overview of the application in the 6 areas, Cheyenne. to then go into the what the tips are. So what are they asking first? And perhaps I've sent the link in the chat. So if everybody just wants to pull that up, if you're able to, that will significantly help your understanding if you haven't already. And if you just go ahead and scroll down onto page 9, you can see the 6 different areas there. So we've got the problem. So explaining the problem you're trying to address and how it's actually a barrier in closing the gap for disadvantaged pupils. The solution. So what is your solution? What are you doing? When are you doing it? How are you doing it? Who's doing it? Actually getting those details about what you're envisioning. The impact. What are those typical changes you would expect to see in a young person or in the ultimate beneficiary of your program or initiative? The sustainability. So how will this be sustainable in the long term? We're not expecting you to have the fully fledged financial model, but what are some of those conversations that have led you to believe that there is a market for this? What is your leadership? So skills and experiences that will enable you to succeed in leading this, and the self-awareness to recognize what are those gaps. And then finally, the value add. There are so many organizations that do provide support. So why is the FEA the right match for you, particularly in terms of the incubator? I know that finance is always great. So we are aware that we are a funder, but what we hear time and time again from our award winners is that the incubator and actually the networks are even more valuable than that. So really helpful to get that as Cheyenne goes through it. Thanks for going forward for that, Cheyenne.
No, thanks for that. That's a very useful interjection. And I can see a few hands. Are they from before, or are those clarificatory questions on what Gina just shared? Helena and Linda.
Hi, this was just a question in relation to so looking at sustainability and impact. Can we provide some form of supplementary information to just showcase some testimonials in case we have tested it so far, or is it just strictly, are we just going by factual research?
I mean, I think testimonials definitely count as part of the, like, I would call it part of, as in a subset of primary research. You can obviously do secondary research, which is looking at the literature that exists from think tanks, governments, etc. But what you've done on the ground, customers or users you've asked, that is also part of research in some way. So definitely. If your question is more around, can you, when you say supplementary material, like if it's a link to something else, then I would say it's better avoid it, and like your answer should be self-contained in some ways, because so I wasn't sure if that was your question, but
yeah, it's more the case of if, for instance, we're in the process of submitting the application, where would we add that? Would we just simply copy and paste that, or can we, is there like an upload button where we can show, like literally just show all the evidence, if that makes sense?
I guess like at each stage there is some kind of evidence. Like with the problem, there's some evidence that the problem is actually important, and often you would have found that out yourself by talking to potential people who are facing the problem, or you might have looked at secondary research or data that indicates that it's a problem. Even on the solution front, you could have evidence where you're just like, I've created this thing, it's a prototype and I've tested it, and this was the initial feedback that I got. And that could be quantitative, that could be anecdotal, and that counts as evidence. And impact kind of builds off of the solution, and it's like, okay, what's the tangible change that's happened to the people who've used your product or service or intervention? And that there again, you're providing some kind of evidence, which could be quantitative or qualitative. So I feel like in some ways evidence, a balance of narrative and evidence is what we're looking for throughout. So of course we want to understand your passion and what motivates you and all of that, but also we want to see the evidence play out throughout the application that you're writing.
Great, thanks.
So just to clarify, you cannot attach supplementary information, and we do not actually want supplementary information because that would make the judging process unfair for those that don't have that. So what we'd encourage you to do, like Cheyenne said, is put that where eligible within the word limit, use a bit of that, but actually we're not looking for any testimonials from the school leaders, but definitely a summary of that for sure would fit really well within the word limits.
Thank you. And Helena, did you still have a question? I know we're going slightly back and forth between presentation and questions, but if it's a burning one or related to the, if it's a clarification one, I can answer it. But if it's a general one, we can take it for the I'll keep it for the Q&A section.
I have one. Oh, sorry. I have one around the problem question, and it's actually just, so we have to quote the sources and obviously the references. Is that included in the word limit? So for example, like I've got one source that is like so long, but okay.
Yeah, that is, and there are creative ways to kind of pare it down. So you just
Yeah.
have the surname, comma, just.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, but that's actually a legitimate problem. Like if you start using like the full name of a report, the year it was published, and the authors, then
Yeah, I've already condensed them down, but yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Cool.
yeah, great question. And Helena, did you have a question as well?
Yes. I mean, as we had applied in the past through the Teach First award, I'm interested in hearing if there are any points or guidance for organizations who have applied in the past, or is there anything in particular we should be aware of?
Right. I would say there's nothing in particular that I can think of. So from our perspective, we would treat it as a fresh application, and you'd be judged using the same yardstick as everyone else.
Right.
I think in some ways the fact that you applied before might put you in a better stead. In some ways you've gone through the process, but from a judging perspective, like it's equal for us.
Right.
And there's no particular guidance as such that we have. But if you want to explore this, and if there are like specific questions you have, I'm happy to chat about in a one-to-one.
Right. I mean, I suppose I was wondering if there would be any judgment regarding how much progress was made or not made since the last time we submitted an application.
Right. So, I mean, that's not explicitly part of our application questions or criteria. Often you would have application forms, or even if you're sometimes applying to a university, they'd have that question of, have you applied before? Like we don't explicitly have that. So we would love to know about your journey, especially if you've existed for a while. We want to understand like what have you done in this amount of time.
Right.
But yeah, there's no specific question around that we have.
Right. Thanks, Ryan. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. And so hopefully with that, with what Gina shared about the specific questions, for those who haven't gone through the guidance notes, that gives you a sense of what the questions are. What the next bit focuses on is actually the top tips of writing the application. And yeah, so I've broken it down to the 6 sections, and I quickly go over some tips that you can use to write a great application. On the problem, which is the first one, that's really what that's one of the core elements of your application. I would say we're interested in ideas that are, trying to look at root causes of a problem and addressing them, as opposed to just kind of whitewash or like a band-aid solution, right? We're really looking for ideas that acknowledge what the real problem is. So digging deep is almost like a natural tip there of really understanding, and you could do that by talking to people yourself. You could look at literature that exists, you could look at data that exists, but as many avenues you can use of getting more clarity around the problem and comprehensive understanding of the problem. So that's one thing I would say, and that's what the next 2 points kind of allude to. So demonstrate that you've done your research, primary and secondary. Use references, and Bilkis had a great question there. Yeah, we'd love to have some references, as many as are feasible to fit in that application question. And again, there are various sources that you can leverage. You could have national and local bodies like DFE performance tables, for example, or data.gov.uk. You could also look at academic research, and finally, you could look at grey literature, which is think tanks and nonprofits. So various avenues there. I'll pause there and I'll actually move on. And then, yeah, any questions we can pick up at the end across those 6 areas. So the next bit is around solution. On the solution, this is specifically related to the first question around where you explain the solution. One good way to do it is often to have a very brief statement about what your solution is, but then go into detail. So that provides like a 1-line summary, and then so it's a nice way to break up your answer. To first give a summary and then talk about the detail, almost like an elevator pitch, and then a part of the answer that goes into specifics. I think the second point around defining the scope of your solution is really important, because I mean, you can't solve everything away. Your product or program has a specific scope, and there's some things it's going to do and some things it cannot do, just by virtue of the wherewithal you have as an early stage entrepreneur, or the aspirations you have an early stage entrepreneur. You have as an early stage entrepreneur, in terms of like what you want to focus on and what you want to solve for. And then so a great way to often explain that scope of the solution is to talk about the specific questions of when, where, how often, who will deliver, who will it be delivered to. And again, that's a loaded question if you think about it. Who will it be delivered to? It's going to be young people in a particular area, in a particular age group, from a particular background, right? You can go into many layers of specificity there. So the more information you give us, or the judges rather, the better it is in terms of them actually being able to paint a picture in their heads of what you're really trying to do and what the scope of your solution is. The other bit is, like the third piece is around, yes, it's important to understand what your solution is and what you're doing, but also having that kind of ambient peripheral understanding of what are others doing. Because it might be the case that you're not the only person thinking about this idea, or you might be doing a version of it and someone else is doing a slightly different version of it. Then there might be scope for collaboration or complementarity there. And so really understanding in the ecosystem, where do you fit in with your solution, and what are other people doing, other players doing. So what are schools doing, what's the government doing, what are other third sector organizations doing, what is the user doing currently, and then how does your solution change that for them. And the last point, which in fact we were talking about this in the brand session earlier today about the USP, and I think some of you attended that. So why are you different or better? Like, what's unique about you? And is it that your quality is better? Is it that you deliver the same thing in a shorter amount of time? Is it that you're cheaper for the same amount of quality? So what's really USP in the grand scheme of things? Moving on to impact, I think here we're really keen to understand, and this goes in line with what I was sharing earlier about painting a picture for the reader. Like, what exactly are you trying to change? Is it skills? Is it attitudes? Is it knowledge? Is it behavior? Is it habits? And again, like, tell us about the changes you are seeing or have seen promise of. And the reason it's phrased that way is because for some people, they might not actually have seen the tangible change, might be at a really early stage, at the idea stage, but they have a sense of what promise their idea holds in terms of being actually able to make changes. So that's why it's kind of broad in that sense. And then within changes, again, you can layer it. You can talk about what's the direct impact, what's the indirect impact, what's the immediate impact, what's the delayed impact. So there are many ways to, again, add more color to the impact question. Moving on, we'll talk about sustainability. And here it's important to think through who will pay for your solution. And there are actually multiple possibilities there. The user that you're serving could be paying for your solution. It could be the government, it could be corporate sponsors, it could be foundations. And what we're really looking for is not necessarily that you've gone ahead and become sustainable or gotten the kind of flow of capital to keep you running, but that you have at least an understanding of what exists out there and who's the right, who will pay for your solution, essentially, right? And a way you can add credibility to this answer is often, there are two ways to do it. One is slightly better than the other, but also more time intensive. So the first one is if you can actually demonstrate demand through conversations you've had, right, with budget holders. So if you're serving a school, if you've actually had a conversation with a head teacher and they've been like, okay, I see value in the product and I think I'm going to pay for it. That's a great it adds a lot of weight to your application, where you're saying that, okay, I've actually had a conversation and someone's seen promise and they've indicated interest. If you haven't actually been able to do that or don't have the wherewithal, you could demonstrate demand through research. So you could look at organizations which typically fund things that are in the area or the domain that you're working in. And you could be like, okay, they've funded something similar, so there's a high likelihood that they'd fund us as well. So kind of through analogous examples, you could try to establish that there is actually someone willing to pay for what you're building. And at this stage, we really want to just see that you have a plan, not necessarily that you've raised a lot of capital or that you're already sustainable. Great. So moving on, we'll talk a little about leadership, and I think Gina alluded to this already a little bit. So what skills are needed to make your idea a success? You have this grand vision and you want to make it a success, but there are certain things in terms of your capacity that are needed to ensure that your idea becomes a success. And some of them you would already have, some of them you may not have. But what we're again keen to understand is that awareness, where you're saying that, I have these 3 skills, I'm missing these 2, which are actually crucial for my idea to be successful. But here's the mitigation, like I'm going to get a co-founder, I'm going to outsource this, or I have this other person I've thought of who's actually going to fill this gap, or I'm going to upskill myself, get coached, whatever that is. The acknowledgement of both your strengths and also the gaps and how you're going to fill those gaps is what we're really looking for. As it says, an honest assessment. No one's expecting you to be superhuman. And the last bit is around, if you have a co-founder or teammate, that's not necessary. We do have solo founders as well. But if you do have a slightly broader team, like how do you complement each other, and what skills do they bring, and how do they add weight to your team as a unit? And finally, we move to the last bit, value add. There's a question just to kind of give a sense of what you've done till date, to set context. But then the bullets 2 and 3 really ask about what other support are you receiving from different organizations. And we actually see leveraging multiple sources of support as a positive. Like, we don't think it's a bad thing if you're actually able to manage, and if you can, give the time that each of those opportunities merit. We're happy for you to be supported by multiple kind of programs or funders and so on. But the bandwidth and ability to commit, that's the key thing, because as you saw, there are multiple elements of support, and while it creates a very holistic program, it also demands time for you to actually be mentally present and partake in that support. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And then there's a piece around why the FEA. So out of all the programs that exist, like, why are we a good fit for you and why are you a good fit for us? So that's kind of what this last bit tries to gauge. So I'll actually pause there because I think that's a lot of information. I want to see if that's sunk in, if you have any questions. And I also want to do a time check with Gina because I can't see the...
Great. You've got about 12 minutes, including all of the Q&A, and then to wrap up before we do the summary and the evaluation.
Got it. So I'm wondering, in that case, maybe I'll do a very quick, like, I'll finish off the slides and then we can have like 5 or 6 minutes for Q&A and do the wrap up with that. Yeah, cool, perfect. So I'll run through this really quickly because I do want to give some time for Q&A, and I'll just do one example. So I'll be, the slides, you'll get the slides at the end of it, so you can go through like all the 6 sections. But just to pick one as an example, if you look at problem, this kindly one of the previous award winners has shared their entry, so we can use it as a reference for prospective applicants. And of course, there are things that are good about this, there are things that can be improved. No application is perfect, but just wanted to highlight a few things that are kind of bolded in here. The first is the 3 million people. You can see that it gives a very real picture around the scale of the problem. So malnutrition affects 3 million people. It suddenly, I'm like, that's a lot of people and that's a big problem. And then the person who's written this, she's backing it up with the source. And again, a concise version of the source. So if we do want to look it up, we can Google it and find it, but we don't need the exact name of the report, which would make it super long. And then again, kind of added more sources there, Buchanan, Ross, Wolf, all of that. But in complement to that big picture sort of positioning of the problem, what they've also done is talked about one individual. So Sam, an FSM year 7 boy. So it's a nice, again, balance between what the big problem is, but also what the personal experience of the innovator is, right? So they've worked with the student who often misses breakfast, eats complex carbohydrates, not the most nutritious meals, and ends up lacking concentration, having mood swings. So something that's a little more relatable. Now, my steer is not that you exactly follow this form. It's not like a format that we're asking you to follow. You can write in your own style, but try to give us a picture of like what the data is, but also what the narrative is, what the anecdotes are, and make it sort of a holistic answer in that sense. Yeah, so just in the interest of time, I won't go through all of them. I have solution, and then in the appendix there's others, impact, sustainability, and so on as well. Maybe you can look at them in your own time, and if some of you are signing up for one-to-ones in May, we can touch upon specific questions that you have. Yeah, so that was the last bit, and maybe you can use the remaining time for Q&A. I'll stop sharing my slides. Great. So let's do a round of Q&A, and then we just have a little bit of time for feedback, but we have about 10 minutes. Is that right, Gina, for questions? Great. So open to the floor for any questions on either application writing top tips, but also anything on the first part that you may not have asked. Yes, Abigail.
Hi. You mentioned before that you wanted to see a business plan. Is that a business plan in completion, or was it just a plan you meant?
Right.
One of the slides, it says we want to see a plan.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I meant plan in the generic sense of the word, like not a specific business plan. We just want to make sure you have an idea of what you're doing.
Just an idea of what we're doing.
Right. So even if you haven't done the thing, like for example with sustainability, you may not have already become a sustainable organization that's getting more money that it's spending on a monthly basis, but you have a plan for how you will become sustainable. So either you've spoken to budget holders who have indicated that they find your product interesting and are likely to pay, or you've spoken to funders, or you've done research on funders who fund similar things. And you have some sort of plan which indicates to us or gives us some belief that you know what you're doing and you've done the research.
Okay, I was thinking you meant a financial business plan that you would present to the bank. No. And the other question I had was, on one of the other slides, it gave a sort of case study of a young boy on free school meals. Was that case study a real case study from a pilot of the project they've done?
Yeah, I mean, so again, there's no way for us to verify. We trust the innovator to be truthful about it.
That's how it was presented.
But even like, assuming it's a true story, of course, there are different ways to talk about it. Often you have consent from the young person to use their name. Sometimes the names are masked, but the story is still true. But again, the essence needs to be true, honestly, like depending on the kind of, consent, etc. You can change some details.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Abigail. Any other questions from the room? Yeah, very, very cute young applicant. Any other questions, anyone? Yeah, I know I've shared a lot of information, so if you want to take 10 or 20 seconds to think about it and just, go back to everything I shared. Great. Yep. So I will, if there are no questions, I'm just going to...
I have a quick question.
Perfect.
Okay, so Cheyenne. So I've done a pilot and I've now got new parts of my program, the school program, but also a new product. In the application, should I focus on that rather than the kind of, because I'm conscious it's Innovation Award, right? So I've piloted something already. Should I focus on all the new arms of like things that I'm doing, or does that not matter?
Right. Again, I think that this is probably one that warrants
for a one-to-one. Fine.
One-to-one.
Okay.
But I mean, I can give you the short answer. It's, I guess, one key thing from our end is we're looking to support an idea as a whole and not like one part of a larger idea in some ways. So in some ways, if you're doing multiple things or you have multiple strands, in some ways we want to see that they're actually an integrated whole, and they, you know, there could be two elements to something, but they're not distinct and distinct from one another, if that makes sense, right? So we want to support UBUs as a whole.
Yeah, so it's two elements for the same mission. So it's like, oh, we'll talk together, but I think we're eligible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Yes, so if there are no more questions, I'll just summarize with next steps. And there's a slide which I want to share, which I think is going to make it slightly easier. So I'll just go back to the slide. Yeah, so this should give you a sense of where we're at and where we're going. We're in the 20 to 29th April phase. This is the Impact Festival. There's a range of workshops available through all of this week and next week. Some are specifically focused on the Innovation Award. Some are generally focused on building skills, understanding different aspects of building your organization and developing your idea. After this, we have a session on the 6th of May, which is preparing for the selection panels. And if you see this kind of flow, we started with Intro to the Innovation Award. We did application writing. The next one is specifically focused on selection panels. And that's the bit where you kind of move from writing to talking, right? Because you need to present to the selection panel, and there's the verbal bit kicks in a lot more, and telling your story and all of that. So we'll talk about that, and then who's going to select, what's the judging process like, all of that. And then we have the one-to-ones, which we've spoken about a few times now, from 7th to the 14th of May, and there are still open slots, so do sign up for them. If there are specific constraints, again, you have in terms of one-to-one slots don't fit with your timelines, you're working late or whatever, maybe you work in a school, and so do reach out if that's the case, if it doesn't fit with your schedule, and we can try to make some arrangements. And all of that culminates again in the 18th of May deadline. So that's what the next steps look like. Now the Fair Education Impact Festival is a big blob over here, but there's a lot underneath it, and you've got those emails with the full agenda. It's fairly chock-a-block. There's a lot in there, so I also highly encourage you to check that out. And we have the other opportunities as well. So I will stop there, and I hope this was useful. If there are any follow-up questions, I welcome you to join the one-to-ones, and of course the 6th of May session as well. And yeah, Gina, did you have anything else? I know we have to do a feedback poll, but anything else before we wrap up?
I was just having a blast writing all of the amazing sessions in the chat that are coming up for you develop your idea. I think so many of your questions were like, go to this session, you're going to hear from this person, but they're all recorded as well. So what's happening is every 2 days, Lauren is sending out an email to all of you, which will have the recordings that you can listen to or replay to go into it. So a few that struck me, Linda, with your question around incorporation, will help you through the incubator on incorporation. But actually there is a session on legal structures from BWB, and you'll be able to hear from other organizations about how they've incorporated and why. So it's just really useful to start getting you a flavor. Equally, Jenny Griffiths from Teach First will be doing how to conduct really in-depth problem research, looking at what you have already, but how can you complement that over the next month, and pulling some statistics or in doing some ethnographic research, even virtually. And finally, in terms of the impact question, there is the session by Caitlin Ross from Big Change, which is around basics of how to create a really good impact measurement plan. So when you come to question 3, what are the intended outcomes that you're looking to achieve? Going to her session will really help you flesh out, okay, if this is the problem, if I flip that, here are the outcomes, and then I'm going to design my solution from there. So it's really problem-centered that will have the greatest impact. So many good sessions, highly recommend you attending them. But don't forget about the ones in the pink, the main room. There are some, like Liz Robinson is leading a session on leadership on Friday. So that is all about head, heart, and hand leadership that they have at Big Education. So a great chance for you to meet other FEA members, which I just think is so magical. Like when you were talking about what you do, I'm like, I got to connect you with this organization and this organization. organization that already exists, because there's a lot of power in that collaboration as well. So highly encourage you to check it out, and look forward to seeing you there and learning more about you and your initiatives over the course of the next 2 weeks. So the last thing from me is, as you might know if you've attended any of the sessions earlier, is that we would love to get your feedback. So in the meantime, if you have some feedback that you'd like to give us, I'm typing the, there we go, typing the email address. But what we'll do, we'll send a survey after all of Impact Festival. But for right now, if you wouldn't mind just doing this quick poll, which is about the session that you've just been in, I'm doing 4 questions around how would you rate it, what's the quality of the session lead, favorite parts of the session, and about the outcomes that this achieved. If you just take a moment right now, I'll be really grateful. And then we'll wrap up. Abigail, is baby voting? Is the baby contributing? Are they giving their session ratings? How do they rate it? I wonder how your baby found the session. It's going to be interesting. I think they're enjoying the phone or whatever they have in their hands. You're on mute, but I can see you saying yes. She's very patient. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for that. That is super useful. And thank you, Cheyenne, for taking us through this. Fantastic to have you leading the sessions and all of the opportunities that are available for more collaboration. So wishing you a lovely evening and look forward to seeing you tomorrow at more sessions.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you both. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.